Thanks for joining us again today, guys. We're happy to have you here in our Tempe location, in our training center. Today, we're going to build off of our last video. Last time, we talked about one of our 5 basic techniques that we teach, our hand marble. What we're going to do today is kind of talk about how you can build upon the techniques, layer them, and create some new dynamic looks, okay? We're going to start with a basic hand marble, and we're just going to add a little different flair to it than we had last time to give you a different look, but still having those core components inside. Today we're going to start off with our liquid white on our kitchen island here. Again, like we talk about in class all the time, Troy and I like to emphasize, we want to have a flow that we've envisioned in our mind with our piece. So as you can see how I'm laying this out, I'm going in kind of a diagonal direction from the left corner, top corner, to the bottom right. It doesn't necessarily have to be 100% poured out in this way, but it gives me something to remember while I'm moving around, putting my epoxy down so that I can keep it in that direction as I go. Once we've got our white down, I'm going to move to our first metallic here. In fact, the only metallic we're going to use today. The beautiful color that we use here. This is our John Stone. It's kind of got a tan gold color to it. The interaction between the liquids and the metallics is really important. It's something we touch on in class quite a bit. If you have metallics against metallics, because of what they are, the metallic, remember, is just a mica powder that is really finely ground, suspended, once it's mixed, in the clear epoxy. The liquid is a pure pigment. That being said, what we want to do is we want to have them intermix so we can get them to interact in a unique way. If you put metallics against metallics, because they're just suspended in the clear, they tend to walk and blend with each other because it's not truly part of the epoxy. Whereas the liquids will keep sharp, crisp lines. What we're trying to do is have that distinct break in color, but not too sharp. If it's too sharp, it looks drawn on. If it's drawn on, it doesn't look natural, right? Remember, what we're going for, along with the thing that we say all the time with random, is we want this to look as organic and natural as possible. Stone in nature is not going to always have, in fact, rarely has straight lines in it at all. And they don't have huge breaking points that are very well defined. So we want a little bit of both. Liquid against liquid will create very, very sharp lines. Sharp contrast, we want some of that. Metallic against metallic will cause a little bit of a shift and a walk in there. We do want some of that. But when you put them together, you get a blend of the both, kind of the best of both worlds there, and it looks more natural. So as always, what we talk about, unless we're doing pure white, we're going to sprinkle our black in to add depth to our piece. So you can just see me just adding it down here. This will really enrich in this color. Kind of tie it all together, give it something that it isn't going to have by itself without the black. Then I'm going to pour a little bit of my black into my color, always into the color. If we pour it directly to our primer, like this area, it's going to stick there, it's going to smear, and we're going to look like kind of we got a skid mark going on. We don't want that. We want to make sure it's as natural and it flows as possible. So I'm going to find some areas that look good to my eye. I'm going to add this to those places. I don't necessarily have to use all the black. So I'm going to show you how I tackle my black versus just smearing it through the whole thing. I kind of go out around it and blend it in afterwards. So like always with our hand marbles, don't be afraid to get in here. Move that material with your hands. We're going random, long and short strokes. Want to make sure we take it to our faces, get good coverage there. I'm going to go out around my black pieces for right now. I'll come back, make sure that they get good coverage, but right now we're going to go out and around them. So we just want to make sure right now in this stage, we're getting our epoxy all the way across our piece, making sure we pay attention to our faces. Right now is not the time where we're super worried about how it's going to lay out. We want to make sure that we're doing random, long and short strokes, but we want to make sure that we take it all the way to the edge, that we get good coverage on our faces. As we teach in class, the first thing a customer is going to see in their home when they walk into their kitchen, when they walk into their bathroom, when they walk into their shop, they're going to see those faces. If the faces don't get a good coating of epoxy when we put it down, it won't flow over that edge. If it doesn't flow over that edge, the faces will look weird, unnatural, and it will ruin your entire job. We want to try and avoid that, so we just need to be cognizant that when we come through, we're always taking our hand all the way to the edge when we move our epoxy. We talked about this a lot of times. Can we use little gauge trowels and rakes? Yeah, we can, but Troy and I have found that we like to be able to feel the weight of the epoxy under our hand, get an idea of where it's thin, where it's not, and address those areas individually as we move through our piece. As you can see, as I move through here, I'm kind of going out and around my black, and there's a reason for that, and I'm going to explain that when we get there. So just hang on tight for me. We're almost to that place. Still wanting to make sure I get good coverage. I've moved all my material throughout the entire piece. Always keeping an eye out for areas where it's light, because we'll go back and tap that. We need to make sure they're not leaving any wide areas open, that we're getting good coverage of our material, but we don't want to overblend. We want to make sure we get a good coverage of everything, but not overblend, okay? So, now our black areas. If we were to take our hand and just drag this through, we're going to darken the entire area, but I don't want to do that. Black is a beautiful addition to a piece and it enhances, but I want it to just kind of be a highlight in a certain area. I don't want it to be something that dominates my whole piece. It's really easy for black to overpower a lot of colors instead of accentuate them. If we give it a chance to do its own thing in its own area, then it can accentuate the color versus dominating a whole section of the piece. So, again, save that for last. I'm going out and around it, just taking a little bit at a time and dragging it with me. Not overly cautious, but I don't want to smear that everywhere. You can see as I go through my piece here, if I were to have mixed that initially across the other thing, I would have darkened this entire area. And I don't want to do that, okay? So again, got good coverage here. I'm going to dress my faces one more time. As I'm doing that, I'm watching for places that may be dry, may need a little attention. So this corner here, not got a lot of epoxy on it, but we're going to get that pulled through. There's another area that's a little dry. If it's an area that you can't tap, that's okay. You want to make sure that you're getting good coverage across that whole place. So go ahead and just massage it in. Remember, our motto is you haven't screwed up till you give up. So we want to make sure that we keep that in play as we do this. Watch our entire face area here. And now I'm going to step back for a second, like we talked about. I want to address this. I want to say, what do I like? What do I dislike? Is this heading in the area I want it to head? So far, I'm liking it. It's got good mixture. It's got good tone. Not super concerned. This area is a little unblended, so I'm going to pull this in a little bit more. This is your time to do that. Make sure you're coming all the way to the edge every time, because a stone doesn't just stop at the edge of at the border of that stone when it's cut. Okay, so I'm liking where we're at. Remember, we always start our hand with 2 gloves on the dominant hand. I'm going to peel that extra one off. I'm going to go to my isopropyl. Okay, always checking that squirt for big and small. We're using 91% like we always do. And now we're just going to come in here. We're going to give it a good lather before we take our next step. So let's see what we get here. Making sure we got good coverage across the whole thing. We want to make sure we accentuate all this, that every bit of our piece is getting isopropyl. Looking good so far. Very nice. Okay. I'm liking that a lot. So we're going to let that do its thing, but while we're waiting for it to do its thing, before we torch it, we're going to introduce a 10-inch blade here, putty knife type situation, where we're going to go ahead and move this material around and blend it in a different way. This is kind of a hybrid technique that we've shown of a switchblade-ish / hand marble, and this is just another way that you can layer things together, marbleize them in a different way, create a different look and a different tone. The way that Troy and I have found that we like it best is we're going to pull our blade with the beveled edge down from the farthest point to us every time. It gives us greater control and lets us kind of pull everything together the way we like. So I'm going to come across the middle here because I like how much extra epoxy I have, and we'll show you how that changes this dynamically. So I'm going to reach across, and I'm not putting a ton of pressure on this. I want it to just pull and flow naturally. I'm going to turn my blade a bunch of different ways as I come through. Take it off the edge. Always making sure I'm not removing too much. And again, I want to create a channel here. Almost, if you will, like this was an area where we had liquid flow that wasn't there previously, and it's creating kind of a dynamic look that we didn't have. You could put this anywhere in your piece. If you think about it, a lot of slabs that we have in nature have areas where it isn't uniform or consistent throughout the area. There's pieces that have been blended, there's pieces that have not been blended, and so on. And so I'm going to pull a couple of these through different areas because I like the way that this is kind of bringing this whole island together. Don't be afraid to take some wide passes, turn your blade, make it sharp. Just blend it in, make sure, again, we're trying to be random with this, trying to keep some natural tones in it. Take this whole corner with it. Okay. Now the beauty of this kind of hybrid technique is if you don't like an area, if it's not turning out the way that you wanted it to, you can fix it really easy by just coming back in and isopropiling it, and it'll turn it back into a marble. So let me add one more place here that I'm liking, and we will address any concerns I may or may not have about this. If I like everything I'm seeing, or if there's some areas I think need to change a little bit, this is the time to do it. Okay. So far looking really cool. So with this technique, it's really easy to kind of drag and dig into your epoxy. So don't be afraid that you're just kind of lightly grabbing across it and you're not pulling very much. That's okay. That's what we're trying to do with this. We're not trying to move a ton in the sense that we are just layering it over the top of itself. So for the most part, I'm liking the way that this is flowing out. To me, it almost looks like an aerial picture taken of a landscape and where you would see waterways. I think it's very elegant and beautiful. It's something that could be integrated into a lot of different homes, different projects, and turn out great. There is an area that I'm not a big fan of right now, and like I said, if you don't like a spot, this is where you're going to come back and you're going to say, okay, I don't like how this is flowing, let's change it back. All you got to do is take your 91%. Again, we're going to check for big and small. And this corner right here, I'm not a big fan of. It's just a little choppy, it's a little over blended, but that's no problem because I'm just going to come in here, sell it out again, and now it's back to a hand marble. Other than that, this is a really dynamic look that you could integrate into a lot of different pieces, and this is just another way that we're thinking outside the box here at Counter. What we want to be able to do is teach you different techniques that you can stack and layer, that you can think outside the box and then integrate into your clients' homes. Doing so will set you above other contractors, will get you more comfortable with using the techniques, and will make you happier overall. So of course we're going to torch this after this, let it lay out flat. Let me just do that real quick. It's always important to come follow up this on all of our pours with a torch, release those air bubbles. It's not something you want to find the next day because that can lead to a lot of problems that you don't want to deal with. Before your top coat, when you're sanding and making sure everything's laying out correctly, if you have a bunch of bubbles in there, Want this as glass-like as we can get it. There we go. Get nice release on everything. Remember, as we're moving our torch, we're going low and close, but we're going quick. And that's really all there is to it, folks. Engage us in the comments below, please. Tell us what you think of these hybrids. Tell us what you'd like to see color-wise. Tell us what kind of techniques you'd like us to try. But we always strive to change and be dynamic in the industry. We're looking for ways to innovate. We're looking for ways to broaden your opportunities as a contractor here at Counter-Eye. We appreciate you joining us, and we'll catch you next time.